What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm your host, Haize. On today's episode, we're going to be starting our draft prospect coverage. We're starting off with Mark Williams from Duke, a center who I see a lot of potential in, and just peeling back the curtain would be my pick for the Bulls to select. Now, we'll talk about if he's going to be there for the Chicago Bulls or not, but in the poll that I put up, this was the first name that was voted, so this is the first name that I'm covering. We're going to get into that. And also, the Chicago Bulls have apparently interviewed a G League prospect who skipped college, go straight to the G League, in MarJon Beauchamp. So we're going to be talking about both these guys today. MarJon, a little bit less. We're not getting as into detail there. I'm just talking about the fact that the Bulls did interview him. We'll get into that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans, starting off our draft coverage. This is something you guys have been asking about for a long time, so I'm happy to finally be able to bring that to you. It was always planned. I wanted to get through the season reviews for players first, and then I wanted to get into, just let things go and get close to the draft. So draft order is all determined unless some trades go down, things like that. And it's a good time to start that draft coverage. So first off, that I do want to talk about is the Bulls did interview MarJon Beauchamp, and so he's a 6'6" guard. He's a scoring guard that skipped college. He went to the G League. Now, he does not have a three-point shot really at all. His three-point percentages aren't great, even looking at college. He's not a three-point shooter. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't turn into a three-point shooter, but the fact that he's able to be a scorer without the three-point shot being a weapon for him really does say a lot, right? That puts you in the mindset of a DeMar DeRozan. Now, I'm not at all making that official comp to DeMar DeRozan, but I'm putting you in that same type of scoring mentality, and the fact that it's not going to be a lot of three-point shooting unless he does develop that, but he can get to the cup and he can score the basketball. He can put the basketball in the hoop. So what that means, what does that mean for the Bulls? Now, the Bulls very much so, and something that I expect AK and Eversley to be doing is really taking a look at every prospect that they have on their big board, and not necessarily just focusing on a position. I do really think that AK and Eversley, if they do keep the pick, are going to be focused on best available regardless of position. But does that mean anything? Does that say anything to the listeners, the viewers, of where AK and Eversley mentality may be? Do you think it's best available? Do you think they may be looking at another guard to possibly develop, meaning that, hey, is it Lonzo's knee thing? Is it to say something about Zach LaVine, maybe some insurance there? What does this mean that they're interviewing MarJon Beauchamp? And I'm going to say this, there's a lot of people who probably would run with this. You guys know I'm a straight shooter. I don't really think that there's much of it personally. I don't think that means that they think Zach LaVine's not going to return. You're probably going to get some people that do say that because, listen, it's off season. It's good to sensationalize for people's stats, things like that. I don't do that here. But I will say this, that it is interesting, right? It is interesting. And something that the Bulls could be looking at also is maybe not as far as insurance for any of their guards that they currently have here. As we know, DeMar DeRozan only has 2 seasons left on his contract. Are they potentially looking at somebody that they can, in MarJon Beauchamp, that they can develop, and then maybe when DeMar's gone, DeMar starts slowing down, that they have a guard that has a similar play style? Again, impact is completely different. We'll see what and who he develops into. That's if he even ends up being on the Chicago Bulls. But there is some potential there. And in fact, like a lot of the draft, the comps for him that you'll see does make you look at it and say, hey, there may be something to this, and this may be a solid pick for the Bulls, regardless of position. Looking at long-term outlook of what this player could become, especially I'll tell you what, if MarJon develops a three-point shot, we're looking at, if he develops a three-point shot in the same way that like Alonzo were able to develop a three-point shot, not at that efficiency, right? Expecting somebody to hit three-pointer at a 40% clip is ridiculous. But if he can add a solid three-pointer to his game to where it's something that you have to guard him out there, we're talking about, 33% from three-point range. If he can get into that range, then really with his other scoring abilities, his ability to put it on the floor, he's not the best passer either. That's something with him. And I said we weren't going to go into a full analysis for him, but hey, guess what? That looks like what we're doing here. But he's not necessarily the best passer. He doesn't handle contact very well either. But if he can get that handle straight, and what he can do in the mid range. If he can get a solid 3-pointer, he's also pretty solid from the free throw line, which you want to see from a guard, especially a guard that doesn't operate out in the perimeter at all. It's some tools there. And as far as the offense is going to always be what I talked a lot about MarJon, but really good fundamentals defensively, right? Not at all a lockdown defender, not somebody that you want to go out and say guard the best guard out, but there's a lot of things there defensively at least that you can build upon and possibly get a solid. Now the thing with him is he's a little bit older. He's going to be 21 years old, 22 years old, but by the time the season starts. So again, that may go more so with the methodology of what AK and Eversley are doing. Hey, like with Io was an older rookie, and that those are players that maybe you can depend on to give you something quicker right away. So if they are moving on from Kobe White, is MarJon Beauchamp going to come into this team possibly, right, and maybe give the Bulls a solid scoring punch off the bench right away? We'll see. It remains to be seen. Let me know what you guys think about MarJon Beauchamp and the Bulls interviewing him in a guard. What does that make you feel that they may be looking at for this offseason? Let me know all that down below. But let's get into the main player that we're here to talk about, the player that I was actually coming here to do an analysis on, and that is Mark Williams. You guys know, anybody who's been watching this channel for a while, when I have been talking about the draft, while I haven't done a deep dive into it, I've brought up Mark Williams almost since the beginning. EJ Liddell is one of those players as well. But right off the bat, I'm going to go to comps with Mark Williams before we even talk about his stats. He is a 7'1", a legit size 7'1". In the combine, he measured at 7 feet without shoes, almost 7'2" with shoes. So that's legit size, 240 pounds, very slight frame. So you can easily see him putting on another 10 pounds of muscle, being around 250 and still being agile and athletic. Some comps for Mark Williams. You'll hear a lot of Clint Capella, but I'm going to make a more comparison for Chicago Bulls fans. And that is, he's a 7-foot Taj Gibson, especially Taj in his rookie year. Taj is being solid defensively. He doesn't have the mid-range shot that Taj ended up developing, but we're talking about rookie Taj Gibson. I think Mark Williams has a defensive skill set that you can immediately see him making an impact on the Chicago Bulls team. And that's always been why he's been my pick for the Chicago Bulls at that position. Is his ability to run the floor. I'm going to overlay this with some highlights, but when you look at what Lonzo's able to do out in transition, and Vooch was always the trailer in transition, and it made sense, got him some threes, stuff like that. But you have a player in Mark Williams with legit size that can run the floor. And while he doesn't have the best offensive skill set as far as back to the basket game, mid-range game, even true post moves, he doesn't have that part of his game solid yet. But being able to get out in transition while being a defensive force is something that could get Mark Williams a lot of points early on, depending on the team that he goes to. And looking at that pairing with the Chicago Bulls, him potentially coming in, again, Lonzo being fully healthy, Caruso, what they were able to do out in the passing lanes and to get out in transition, Mark Williams can be a very dangerous player for the Chicago Bulls out in transition. He also brings enough upside offensively that you can look at and say, hey, maybe while he'll never develop a three-point shot or anything like that, he'll never be a level scorer, he could possibly develop a solid mid-range game, a solid back-to-the-basket game if you work with him. He's moldable in that way. He's 20 years old. He won't be 21 years old until December. Birthday's actually about 10 days after mine. But he won't be, so it won't be until December he turns 21. You could possibly get a player in Mark Williams, like I said, that has enough to potentially give you some defensive things now. Now, again, that depends on what he's able to do with staying out of foul trouble. As we know, with young bigs, they get in foul trouble very early into their careers. Almost every big in the NBA had foul trouble early in their career. It's just something that happens. It happens with big players adjusting to the physicality, adjusting to the true size of some of these NBA players. So that's just something that you can expect with Mark Williams. But the key thing in what he can give you offensively, we'll talk about a little bit more about the defense here in a second, what he could possibly give you offensively. In just his freshman to his sophomore year in college, he added 4 points per game at a better efficiency rate. He shot the ball from 2-point range at 72%. Overall field goal percentage of 72%. What that says to me is that that's a player that picks his spots offensively, who knows his role, who doesn't try to do much offensively, but when he does decide to get baskets, they're within the flow of the game. Mark Williams is a very smart defensive player as well. When you look at somebody who averaged 2.8 blocks per game at the college level, again, a skill set that the Bulls could need and would definitely use big time. Defensive rebounding, right? That's another thing that the Bulls missed out on. Defensive rebounding, 4.8 defensive rebounds per game in his sophomore season, 2.6 on the offensive end. Again, not that that's going to translate one for one in the NBA, but that shows that he fights for rebounds, and that's something that we also need on this team. His free throw percentage also took a big leap from his freshman to his sophomore year. He started off 53% in his freshman year from free throw range, 72% from free throw range in his sophomore year. This is why this guy is high on my list, and that's possibly going to be why he does not fall to the Chicago Bulls. He shot up mocks in the last few weeks. He averaged anywhere between like 17 to about 22 in most mocks up until like the last 2 weeks. He shot up now as high as 9th in some mocks going to the San Antonio Spurs. So that's going to be the difficult thing, is if he falls to the Chicago Bulls, just looking at his skill set. The Spurs could be a possible one for him, but then I also look at the Knicks, who could be losing out on Mitchell Robinson this offseason, could let him walk. Mark Williams, a very solid replacement for Mitch Robinson, somebody you still need to develop, right? He's not going to come right in more than likely and do what Mitchell Robinson was able to do, but he brings a lot of those same skill sets. So if you're trying to look at not losing that for the New York Knicks at number 11, which is in the lottery, he makes a lot of sense for them. Also, Charlotte having 2 picks, one in the lottery at number 13, one at number 14. The Cleveland Cavaliers don't see a lot of, it doesn't make a lot of sense considering their front court or what they already have there. So Charlotte as well, probably looking for a defender, could very well use a long, athletic defender, somebody who can run with LaMelo Ball as well. Atlanta, can he get past Atlanta and Houston to make it to the Chicago Bulls? Houston, I don't know what the heck Houston's doing. A lot of people don't know what Houston's doing. Houston could be very well drafting best available, but they could have Mark Williams on their board best available as well. Atlanta, I don't know, right? It depends. That's possible as well, especially if they're looking to move on from Collins at some point. They could take a look at Mark Williams. Mark Williams could help them a lot as well. So there's a lot of potential for teams above the Chicago Bulls to go ahead and draft Mark Williams. It's really unlikely, I will admit. It's more likely than not that he's not going to make it to the Chicago Bulls. So don't look at that happening. But I will say, if he's on the board at number 18, that's my guy. That's the guy that I want to see the Chicago Bulls go after. I would love to see them draft Mark Williams. I think what Mark Williams brings, even if you need to bring in another veteran big, but Mark Williams can bring you that immediate need of defense off the bench while also taking some time to develop. I think he can play next to Vooch I think he'll be better in stretches next to Vooch than what Tristan Thompson was. I don't know if you want to run very long stretches of them together, but I can see him playing next to Vooch, especially with him primarily working and operating just in the middle. I know we wanted to see Vooch take less threes, but Vooch also can operate in that mid-range, get a little bit space there depending on who else is on the floor. And I do like the matchup of him and Patrick Williams being out there together as well. I like the idea of Mark Williams and Patrick Williams being next to each other and what they bring. Imagine a lineup in Patrick Williams, Mark Williams, and possibly possibly like a Javonte Green or somebody out there with them as well. That's going to be a solid defense and a transition team out there as well. So that's something that I look at what he projects to bring the Chicago Bulls. And then we still don't know what's going on with Marko Simonovic. Marko Simonovic, who has a great offensive skill set, not the best defensive skill set by any means in what we've seen so far. If Marko does put on some weight during this summer and can be on the Bulls bench, I definitely like short runs of Marko and Mark Williams being out there as well too. Mark Williams is the guy for me. That's probably why the Chicago Bulls are not going to draft him. I don't think I've ever made or had somebody in mind that I would love to see the Chicago Bulls draft that they ended up going out and drafting. So that's my thoughts there on Mark Williams in our first draft coverage. We're going to be doing EJ Liddell next. Let me know what you guys think down below on everything. MarJon Beauchamp, what do you think about Mark Williams? Or do you think that he falls to the Bulls? If he does fall to the Bulls, do you want to see the Bulls draft him? Would you mind the Bulls moving up to get Mark Williams as well? They potentially could package a Kobe White with that 18th pick and maybe talk to Charlotte and say, hey, Charlotte, can we get that 15th pick from you? Charlotte, who may be looking at some solid scoring to come off the bench. Again, we don't really know what Charlotte's doing. Kobe has a lot of potential still. Really just depends on how other teams in the league view Kobe White and what they can see from him. But I can very well see them shipping out Kobe White with that 18th pick to try to move up if they see Mark Williams being their guy. More than likely, AK is going to play that close to the vest and take whoever's he sees best available. We know that AK while he does do some maneuvering in the draft, I don't know if he's going to feel the need to move up unless he really sees a guy that he sees developing into a potential star for the Chicago Bulls. And while I don't think Mark Williams has superstar potential, I do think Mark Williams has long-term, again, I'm not saying right away, I do think that Mark Williams has some potential to be one of the best defensive bigs in the NBA at some point in his career. If the potential works out, if he puts in the work, if he adjusts to the game and the physicality very well, I can see that from Mark Williams big time. But I want to hear from you guys. Sound off down below on what your thoughts are on Mark Williams and if he falls to the Chicago Bulls or if they should be a little bit more aggressive at going at Mark Williams. Do you think Mark Williams has that type of potential and brings that to the team where the Bulls may look at going at him aggressively and maybe making a move to do so? Let me know all that down below. Thank you for tuning in to Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave us a text and or voicemail to sound off on any of the draft prospects, again, mailbag episodes are Saturday. So as we go through draft prospects over the course of this week, if you want to send in voicemails about them to play on that mailbag episode on Saturday, the number to do that is 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.